Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Economancer, High Priest of the Economicon. Today we're going to go back into Corruptibles by Brian KLAAS. We're going to end the chapter 4. This is probably one of the more difficult chapters I had to run through. In fact, this is probably the second time that I've shot this video, just because there's a lot of ridiculousness going on in it. So we're going to start off. So we left the last chapter saying there's power gap still persists, and why do people make such badly skewed decisions? And he says we need to travel back in time to understand the origin of our species, which he continuously says that. We continuously go back and look at these different evolutionary processes when all of this should have been laid out in the second chapter on the evolution of power. And we shouldn't continuously have to go back and forth and look at this. But what is this Stone Age mismatch? Basically, this is what evolutionary psychologists deem how our Stone Age mind thinks about the heuristics and what we choose to do with that. I tend to think that this might be something incorrectly given to our ancestors. So the first thing he makes the point about is, like, if you have trouble with a diet, you shouldn't blame yourself, because your ancestors had this need to have sweetness in their food, so sugar. But the sugar that they ate was like mildly sweet, you know, something like a carrot versus the Fruit Loops that exist nowadays, right? So there's a big mismatch there. And then another part of this evolutionary mismatch that he talks about is fat. Now, fat is good for you, and this has kind of been one of those weird things that people say, that fat is bad and you shouldn't eat fat and so on and so forth. But is fat actually bad? I don't think it is. It might be bad, but it might not be bad, ? So there's a lot to be cracking open in that. And it's also like, what kind of fat that we're eating. Anyway, so he says our Stone Age minds have set up this mismatch, and we're hardwired to favor some traits over others. And one of the statements that he makes, which is really weird, right? He says there's plenty of evidence that we use physical appearance as a shortcut when choosing leaders. But if we go back to page 26 that we had done in a video prior, we find that suddenly it became much harder for a bigger member of a group to physically dominate the smaller members of the group against their will. Rather than accepting the rule of physically powerful, humans now had a choice. And the choice was associated with how people acted. But that's really weird the way you lay that out. Because what you had stated earlier was that, hey, nobody really needed to care about any of this, because we're now in competence hierarchies versus like dominance of physical capability hierarchies. But now you're saying that no, we do have to care about this because our brains are hardwired. Why are our brains hardwired if what you stated earlier in the evolution of power doesn't necessarily need this to be true? And this is where you're just sitting here going, how did you come to these conclusions? But it's never explained. It's never pointed out on why we have to act out a certain way. All it said is that, hey, this is the way it is. Anyway, so then he's talking about how, because of the way society exists nowadays, and I'm going to kill your reclusive taxidermists because whatever. The way we exist nowadays, men are prioritized over women. And then not only that, big men or tall men are prioritized over short men. And he calls this idiotic. He says it is possible and essential to override these idiotic impulses. But why are these impulses idiotic? If they come from the natural path of humans, and you're saying that it's a Stone Age mismatch, why would we assume that our cultural evolution, which is much, much faster than our physical evolution, hasn't kept pace with that? unless you think that everything that exists in the human mind is only of the human mind. And that kind of syllogism I don't find useful in our, modern existence, right? There has to be something more that's going on. And I'm going to put that back in your hand, and I'm going to continue. Yes, you have something. You're going to hexproof it with a 1-1. No. All right, and then boom. We're going to put this here. We gain some life. Then we're just going to swing. Just going to keep swinging. All right, so now we're going to back to this statement. He says, as we saw in chapter 2, hunter-gatherer societies were flatter than modern ones. But that's an assumption that the writer made. That's actually not borne out by what it was said in the original statement. In the original statement, if you remember, he doesn't say that. He says, well, some of them were, but we don't know to the extent as to how far different things were, how much equality there was. We have some evidence that some of the, prehistory civilizations were extremely flat. But we have other ways of looking at it and say a lot of them were not flat at all. So it makes you wonder. Don't need that. Don't need that. Do need that though. Anyway, so why aren't things flat? Or are they flat? So it's just an assumption, and there's contrary evidence against it, and he just tends to ignore it, right? All right, so he says it's time to unlearn these outdated instincts, but we don't know why these instincts are considered outdated. We're just told that they are. And I don't know about you, but I can't stand when we say something is outdated. Now, which one of these should I kill? I don't like him having more mana, but it doesn't really matter. He has one card in hand. Okay, so yeah. It doesn't matter. We'll kill this one. And once again, we will just punch down. You can only block one, so you're down to 1 life. Unless you hit something with life, you're pretty much dead. All right. So now he's going into gender and giants, where he's talking about how gender is basically just a big gender theory, and it's completely asinine. So he's talking about the blind tests about how we ought to treat certain things, and if the CV or the resume is assigned blindly without a name, there tends to be a higher call for males over females, which isn't actually true. If you actually look at the data in hiring practices, women have, depending on the field, a much higher chance of getting hired than men. Yeah, let's just go ahead and draw more cards. I don't need to. Yeah, perfect. This is game over. I have enough life that I could just let him punch me down. Yeah. I can kill one of his creatures. We're going to kill that. No. Okay, yeah, we'll just kill this one. Boom. And you don't have enough defenses, so I win. Anyway, so the reason why I bring this up is this is what he says in this, and it's just ridiculous. He says, society is slowly waking up to the such long-standing gender discrimination, but a crucial question is still unanswered. Is that bias culturally learned, or is misogyny also rooted in prehistoric past? Why is it that bias is misogyny? Now, what do you think the definition of misogynies is? Is the hatred, contempt, or prejudice against women? How is having a preference for something else equal to the fact that I hate the other thing. That's an incorrect word used here, and this is where we're starting to get into all of this. Preference does not equal bigotry, and that's a big issue that's going to be rolled up in the rest of this chapter. All right, so now he's going to talk about why women should be leaders, and he talks about a book wrote back in the day called Herland by Charlotte Pickens Gilman. We'll go with that hand. And it's basically a fantasy about how women are better than men, and then if women ruled the world and only had women babies, the world would be a better place. And he says, you know, it's important to avoid being gender essentialist, but substantial research has demonstrated that on average, women are less prone to despotism and men are more eager to rule by democratic means. All right, so we've got this first fundamental issue. Is the opposite of despotism democracy? Is there not something along the lines? Is democracy what we want for our society, or are there other ways that we could set up our society? Because pure democracy doesn't seem like a very good idea, right? And there's plenty of reasons to think about this, right? We don't always have to do everything democratically. Like the United States isn't a democracy. We are a democratic republic or a representative republic. We worry about making sure that we represent things more so than we do anything else. We don't have to have perfect equality. And that's important when we're talking about this. All right. Now he says the difference in difficulty at reaching the top could skew the data because a small number of exceptional women are being compared to at least some unexceptional men. And if you've ever watched any of the interviews with Jordan Peterson, he constantly talks about how it's really inappropriate to look at, you know what, we'll just keep them both. It's really inappropriate to point out how we compare the top frame of reference for men versus the top frame of reference for women, and that men may have some selected pressures that are different. And all of that makes sense, and all of it is useful when we're looking at the differences. So it's simply not true that this comparison is made willy-nilly. All right, and so he's going into this with clock-like regularity. Vladimir Putin releases photos of himself shirtless on a horse, practicing judo, or doing some warrior show of strength. These signals can be effective because of our Stone Age brains. Maybe, but I constantly hear complaints from leftists talking about how much they hate someone like Vladimir Putin because all they do is, you know, all he does is signal how badass he is, etc., etc., and that we should reject this because it's, you know, it's just some leftist balking constantly at the traditional masculine behavior. And also, Putin isn't like a really big guy. It's not like he's huge. He's not like he's the biggest dude ever. He's actually a fairly small guy. So that's something to think about. Second, judo isn't like a really big tough guy sport. I don't know why you would think that. Yeah. Are you going to double block and save? No, maybe. You probably need to. No? Okay. That's weird. End of that. Okay. So, yeah. Judo is a sport about using, you know, your body to beat the other person's body by being, even though you're smaller, by being able to manipulate their body so that you can do better and you can beat them. So it's definitely not like he's a really big bad dude. All right. And then he goes, due to evolutionary mismatch, such signals are now utterly irrelevant. Are they? After all, Angela Merkel and Jacinda Ardern have been two of the most effective politicians in recent memory. Should anyone care how much they bench press? That's a completely subjective statement, right? Like, what do you mean that we shouldn't care about how much someone can bench press? Okay, there is an argument to be made about, okay, well, who bench presses more, Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but physical fitness is essentially a manifestation of mental fitness. So why would we not care about that? Why would we just ignore that construct? And boom, I win. Because the more physically fit you are, the more mental preparedness and mentally fit you are. And to reject that is an absolute balk at modern science when we think about how humans have existed, especially if you're taking this evolutionary standpoint. Humans have existed to move, to do stuff, to be strong. Our brains are connected to our bodies. They are one in one, right? When you grab something, when you act out, right? So I usually explain this to students learning algebra. They're like, oh, I don't understand a parabola. I don't understand how we can calculate this. How did anybody come to this? It's like, your brain automatically calculates parabolas, right? And if you think I'm kidding, if you're throwing a ball, you take a ball and you throw it. Oh my God, I'm going up against Karl Marx. Best game ever. I have to win. Please let me win. Do not let me lose to the Marx of Karl. But yeah, so we definitely know how that works in modern society. And I think it's an absolute ridiculous statement to say that our evolutionary history of moving and thinking at the same time is somehow disconnected, because the more physically fit you are, the more brain power you're going to be able to utilize. And I win. I beat Karl Marx without doing anything. He saw the power of capitalism and quit. I should end this video right here just because that's all there is to it. Anyway. So he says we can either pretend these biased, sexist leadership templates don't exist within us, for at least many of us, or we can accept that they do and overcome them. Why is it sexist? Once again, we're on this statement. Why is it sexist, racist, homophobic, or whatever to have a preference for something that's not that? It's not like there's better signaling mechanisms that we have. This heuristic helps us make these choices. Should we apply a lot more of our system one thinking over our system two, or so on and so forth? How much time are we willing to put into this? And that's something that hasn't been talked about. How much time is anyone willing to put into learning any of these tasks? Do I have anything to play? No, I don't. So I will start with, I guess I can now. So yeah, ridiculous statement. Then it goes into the Prussian army. About how the Prussian leader, oh no, we'll figure it out. So about how the Prussian leader, Frederick Wilhelm, he created like this huge mass of men that were huge, and it was funny that he just created all of these individuals that were just really big, and that's what he wanted to do. He just wanted to have a really big people army. And I find that absolutely hilarious. But he ended up getting beat down by, who is it? The really small guy, Napoleon Bonaparte, right? Napoleon Bonaparte's really small, but he beat him. But here's the thing. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't actually that small. He was above average height, and we all know this, and yet we still have this silly statement to make that, oh, Napoleon Bonaparte, he was so small. But he wasn't. All right, so here comes a funny one. Having a gun and an itchy trigger finger was all you needed when it comes to combat. Tell me you've never seen combat without telling me you've never seen combat. You have to be physically fit to fight in the military. Why do you think that there is such a strong impulse towards people being physically fit in the military? Why? Why would that be an issue? Oh no, pacifism. I still get my passive thing when I kill one of your silly... Should I do that? Yes, I'm going to. I'm going to mind flay his Angel of Unity because that's hilarious. Yay, I have your angel. Oh no, plan our ally. What do I do? Whenever it attacks, it joins the dungeon. It doesn't do anything right now. Anyway, So he says one study found the several extra inches of height correlate with, on average, roughly 200,000 in additional lifetimes earnings. There's no rational reason for it, yet it persists as a modern thing. Why is there no rational reason for it? I think there's a rational reason for it. Just because you don't doesn't mean that I care what you think. There's definitely a rational reason for taller people to be preferred in modern society, right? Like it makes sense for that to be true. And you could disagree. You could be like, well, no, just because you're taller. Again, it's all about physical fitness and mental fitness and what this tells us. I'm not gonna let you play that. Counter target spell. No Sarah Angels. No angels. I don't like your angels. Go away. Hurry up and scoop. So we go into babyface and bigotry, which basically looks at how in modern society, people with baby faces are preferred. And again, all of this gets really, really nonsensical because there's a part in here where he's like, some people have certain types of preference when by how they look, right? So black people with baby faces aren't preferred over black people with baby or without baby faces, but white people are preferred with baby faces versus the other because they look less threatening, and because they look less threatening, they look like they may have more leadership, but that doesn't actually matter, so on and so forth. But it's just the whole statement is just bonkers. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense. And then he goes into why we need blind how do I say this? These blind trials for hiring in the labor market. He goes, you can hardly create a blind review for presidential candidates, but this is one way, blind review process is one way to deal with the problems associated with biases for gender discrimination or racial discrimination. But here's the thing, blind recruitment, is something that a lot of leftists are against now because they do lead to certain biases. And that it further skews the distribution, where we had initially thought that it would flatten the distribution, but it actually skewers the distribution. And then he goes, better decisions will get made when that myopia is eliminated. Maybe, but we actually don't know that for a fact. These are assumptions that he's making on how individuals exist in our modern world. But we don't know if this is actually true. I'm going to attack with you, and you. Are you willing to do all of that? Are you willing to double block it? Anyway, so he talks about how all the essays he grades in school where he teaches, to get rid of his, childhood teacher bias and to create a more fairer system, and to destroy the systemic inequalities. No, I don't want to turn any of these in my hand. That's fine. Next. Boom, boom. Yeah, I get to draw a card. End of turn. So, and all the deep roots of our psyches and stuff like that, he takes the names off all the papers that he grades. Some people may think that that's what you need to do. I actually disagree. Fundamentally, I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Because it says two other creatures. Yeah, you don't have any other. You can put them on mine. Yeah, do that. Put it on mine. That'd be awesome. That'd make me feel good about myself. Because look, if you have a student and you know you're worrying about this student, and you read their paper, you want to know over time if they've had improvement. And I guess you could still do that after the fact, but I don't know why you would want to do that. That just seems, I don't know. That just doesn't seem proper. I would want to know what's going on with my students. I would like to know how they're writing, what they're writing about. And it's not like it actually fixes the problem anyway, because you're still going to know who's doing it at the end of the day, because you're not stupid. You know what their topic is going to be and stuff like that. So blind grading doesn't actually fix the problems. And so now we're on to the last statement. Why are corrupt or corruptible people so effective at manipulating their way into power? To put it bluntly, why do so many society's leaders seem to be narcissistic psychopaths? And once again, we're on this statement to where we think that the leaders of the free world are narcissistic psychopaths, and it's the end of human society, so on and so forth. It's terrible. We should, do better. But at the end of the day, that's just bull crap. And I'm going to keep you as messed up as I possibly can. Yeah, you get rid of that card. Nope, no attacks. I'm going to try to keep you from beating me down. You've got that. All right, so let's have a quick chat about everything. All right, so first off, this guy is super racist, super terrible about everything he does. Can I not counter any? Oh, yeah, I didn't have anything to counter anyway. Crap. Here comes some beat down. Yeah, that's going to hurt. I don't know why you would do that. He does have a 2/2 that gets to stay up, but I think I might be able to punch down on the next one if I'd have got to keep Grazalax, Illithid Scholar, or be able to pull one card out. One of my bigger, stronger ones. But yeah, so the dude is super racist. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of his beliefs are fundamentally incorrect, in my opinion. And I don't like the way he puts it, so take that for what it's worth. Should I? Yeah, I'm gonna have to draw. Just to search for something. Oh. Well, he's got angels, so that's not gonna help. Alright, I can kill that one or that one. Which one do I care about more? I can kill that one. So let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No. No. I gotta stabilize the board. Anyway, I'm gonna keep that up so I can, in case I need to. Okay. What are you doing that you're needing that much mana? That doesn't make any sense. It's okay. Anyway. Why did you do that? Now. Anyway, I'm going to counter that. Just because I can take the damage. It's 10. Oh, no. No, I lose. Oh, I did that wrong. I needed to kill one of his creatures. I lose. I was poor playing. See, look, y'all have ruined me. Me running my mouth has made me lose this game. Anyway, that's the end of this episode. Hope it was kind of fun. It was probably all over the place, but thank you. Come again.